I went to the University of Wisconsin, and while I was there, I was in the type department, and I opened up a drawer full of metal type, and it sang to me. Something happened when all that beautiful stuff was like shining out of those little boxes, and I just said, wow, I wonder where it comes from. Because I didn't know much about it at the time, and I started talking to a professor of mine about it, Philip Hamilton. He explained to me that everything that I was going to learn there was obsolete. And that sort of whetted my appetite, because it meant that there was a whole nother world of typography out there that didn't have anything to do with these metal drawers. I was interviewing with Sherry Cohn and Larry Oppenberg at Mergenthaler, and they said that designing typefaces was what they did all the time. They were thinking about moving the format over to film and scans and various things, and the digital outline turned out to be the right format to store things in. Within, 9 months or a year, I went from drawing on paper with a pencil according to the union rules to completely outside of the normal bounds with a program written in Fortran with all the messages in German, neither of which I knew, Fortran or German. So that was really the introduction to computers. Back then we were just getting our feet out of the analog water and starting to get them dry. And of course I always had Mike Parker at Linotype and Matthew Carter at Linotype and Sherry Cohn and Larry Oppenberg. So it was a really solid, if you look forward at what those people did in the 80s, to start out with them in the 70s was pretty cool. When Mike did the business plan for a digital type company, he realized that if you didn't need to be under the thumb of the machine division, then it could be successful. And he was really right. So that was the main thing. Mike saw two things fairly early on, way before anybody else. One was the type designer was at the center of the process of type design. And secondly, that typefaces should be independent of the machines. And both these things have turned out to be really visionary things that Mike saw. Nobody else, except for ITC at the time, believed that. And they only believed it because they didn't have any machines. The only way that you could make machines that would sell back then was to have a standard library of fonts. And that standard library had to be Linotype or better. And so with Matthew and Mike and all of us, we were doing better. We weren't cloning the fonts because a lot of the fonts had a lot of problems with them that we knew about because we had been forced to make them that way. So they weren't the same typefaces that we had made at Linotype. They were different fonts. And it was moving into a whole new world where the machines at Linotype didn't make any difference. And this is basically what happened to all the machine manufacturers. CompuGraphic, Autologic, Linotype, Berthold, they all made typesetting equipment. And one after another, their font libraries had to fly away to be safe from the crash of the machine business. And we were just the first ones to do it. The beginning was Camex and Cytex. They were way ahead technologically than anybody else in combining images and graphics into a single workstation. And so those early customers basically funded the development of the company. And for 2 or 3 years, it was very tough. We didn't have any other clients, and the image setting wasn't really happening that fast. And what happened next was that Adobe came in and sort of scooped Bitstream for the beginning of digital fonts. Mike tried to sell our library to Adobe, but it turned out Jobs had dictated that it was going to be Linotype fonts. And then eventually what we had to do is we had to sell bitmaps. And that started to get the company going financially. But it took a while, and by the time the company got big enough to be standing on its own, I was so far from type design that I had to leave. I had been exposed to the Macintosh by a visit to Jim Von Air. I thought it was a toaster when he first put it on the table, and he turned it on and fired up Fontographer, and there was this little tiny screen, and we were all sort of drawn in like some sort of magnetic material until we were about 8 inches or 10 inches away from the screen, and we were all laughing at it because it was so small and it looked like a toy, and I kind of got the feeling that this was more than that. Once Roger knew that I had a Mac, he proposed that I should leave Bitstream and make custom fonts for him, and it was too scary at the time. But I continued working for Bitstream for another year, and that got even more scary than working on a Macintosh. And in the meantime, the Macintosh had come out with the Mac 2, to which you could hook a larger monitor, with which I produced a custom font for Roger, and he was just overjoyed. And so then I knew that I had something that I could do for a while besides work at Bitstream. And so when the opportunity came up to get fired, I did. Sherry said go out and be a star, and I figured Matthew would be with me soon because he was really jealous that I could design fonts on a computer. Initially, I was finding people who knew how to draw pretty good, but they didn't know what all the characters meant, and they didn't know how to space at all. So the first things that I did was I wrote a guide on how to space fonts from the beginning according to the Walter Tracy linotype method, which nobody knew at the time because it hadn't been published. These things were semi-secret to the industry. And how to make accents, accented characters, and what all the other glyphs that people weren't really aware of, what they meant and how they were used and what you had to do to make them. So at the beginning, it was important for the young designers to be exposed to the way I was. I sat in basically a typographic bullpen, and we were all in one big open space, and people would yell across, "What's the hairline of the $sign in Helvetica again?" And all these numbers were on people's lips and at the tips of their tongues and in their brains. And so I wanted to recreate that, and we had that at the Font Bureau with people yelling instructions across the halls and stuff. So the big thing was just to get the young designers into the quality standards that we were interested in, and into a routine where they could be taught. Font Bureau, unlike other foundries, is not named after me, for one thing, and it's not about me, for another thing. The company has a very diversified power structure. I don't think of myself or the company as carrying on the traditions of any other particular company, as much as the traditions of type designers, where they're trying to make things that will last and that are very high quality. I see the future of the Font Bureau as being a company that continues to serve their clients first and foremost, and continues to be on the edge of technology first and foremost, whether or not I'm there. It's just, and I hope that goes on. And I get that feeling from the people that are there. There's a tremendous amount of camaraderie. There's very little competition within the company, and everybody owns their own house, just about. We're working on it.